On Saturday 3rd of October, the Western Bulldogs did battle with St Kilda in the second elimination final. I was cautiously optimistic for my team, the Western Bulldogs, as we had won 5 of the last 6 with that one loss to top 4 side and contender Geelong. I would have liked us to at least get one finals win with a sliver of hope that we could repeat our heroics in 2016. However, with that not being the case, as the Saints held on for a 3-point victory, holding off a late comeback from a closing Western Bulldogs team, possibly triggering my PTSD from our lost preliminary finals to this very team in 2009 and 10. Before we get started off, I'm going to relatively quickly, cover the elimination final between the Western Bulldogs and St Kilda Saints, then go on to the season review for the Bulldogs. For background, I am an avid, lifelong Western Bulldogs supporter, and I thought it would be a good idea to get some AFL related videos up on YouTube. Why should you take on my opinion? Well, you shouldn't. I'm just a man with a microphone voicing his opinions into the nether. If you like my stuff, hey, it's all good for both parties. By all means, I believe everyone should be able to form their own opinion on things when it comes to football. When it comes to my videos or opinions, I will try to keep as objective as I can, but keep in mind I'm a very Bulldog-centric person and my views will be specifically for and through that lens. For instance, I do not watch many other AFL games during this season other than Dogs games, so it would be unfair of me to do other season reviews of other teams, which I do not quite have my eye on. That is the way things will be for now. On to the game review. First quarter started off well for us, where we opened off with the Josh Bruce goal and we were generally dominating the play. However, the advantages in the Saints' game plan going in were showing their early signs. It was clear that they wanted to push their advantage of the ruck, with their ruck duo of Marshall and Ryder. English generally does well to compete, but it is clear, especially up against Ryder, that he hasn't beat with experience and general strength around the ground. They relied on the back 6 to defend well, and they did. Who consisted of the likes of Howard, Wilkie, Carlisle and Caulfield, who were all very good on the day. They were able to intercept a lot of ball against our well-documented, somewhat dysfunctional forward line. We saw one of the key matchups of the night being Jaron Geary on Caleb Daniel. Ultimately, the Saints took their opportunities when they needed to, despite our forward of centre dominance, which was the story of the night in the end. However, for the most part, in my eyes, we got to play the way that we wanted, and the Saints were also backing in their own game plan. It wasn't until a key injury in the second quarter where I believe the wheel started to turn in favour of the Saints. More of the same in the first half of the second quarter, where we generally had more possession of the ball but were not able to make the most of our opportunities going forward. When Max King took this mark, this is where Zane Cordy got injured. It wasn't shown on the broadcast, but I thought it'd be nice to show it off here. It looks like a sprained ankle to me, and a nasty one at that, since he did not return to the game afterwards. This would, in my opinion, be the key difference in the second half that the Saints were able to exploit, having us one less tall in defense. For the majority of the game beforehand, we were able to quell the talls of the Saints because of our tall defenders would generally be able to cover one another. However, with one tall down, the Saints would be able to turn their defensive intercepts into better counterattack opportunities down the other end. I'm going to show off an example from the third quarter. Here we have Carlisle have a high hoping kick up forward. Let's freeze it here. In my opinion, I think if Zane Cordy was still on the ground, he would have been able to effect a spoil and keep the ball forward. But as we see going forward, the Saints get the ball forward and make the most of their opportunities. Max King didn't convert, but they would create many opportunities like this and scored from enough of them to get the win. Saints were better in my opinion in this department, and this was one of the main reasons why they got the win in the end. They knew they had the advantage all night in the air, and when they could get it forward, it wouldn't allow one of our talls to help out defending against kicks going to opposition ruckmen or talls. As we know, they do have Ryder, who had the upper hand against English on the night. They seemed to take full advantage of us in the third quarter, being one defender down, where they kicked 4 goals to 1. However, I think we could have stemmed the flow a lot better. Did it eventuate, but what can you do? There were several times where we would put the pressure on them in our forward half, and I thought we had them, but the Saints would have the presence of mind to be able to get a disposal away to an open man. In this example, Ryder kicks it to Steele, who hesitates for a bit and then gets called for play on. Before he realizes it, he's wrapped up by Tim English, and then just before he's being caught for holding the ball, he gets a crafty kick away.
At this point, my frustrations kind of reached boiling point, and for him to get a kick away, which in the end resulted in a goal, just compounded with our struggles forward and centre on the night, because St Kilda took most of their opportunities when they needed to. It was a game of small margins, and if we were to probably land a tackle better or get a meter here or there, we'd probably be looking at a win.
You know, credit to them. Their defense held up pretty well for the entire night. Not to mention we had a couple of set shots that, had we converted, we could have had a very different looking 3/4 time break. The Saints head into the last change with a 24-point lead. Not insurmountable by any means, but quite difficult in shortened 16-minute quarters. Had Bailey Smith and Lockie Hunter converted, we would probably be looking at a different outcome. It was disappointing to see them miss, and I'm sure the players will be hurting after letting one slip. And you know, mistakes happen in footy, but we were eventually able to put ourselves in a winnable position in the last quarter. In the last quarter, with our backs against the wall, we pretty much dominated the play as we wanted. However, the Saints' defense held out well for the better part of the quarter, with our first goal coming in with roughly 9 minutes left. We were really pushing when the Saints got one back against the flow. Then goals to Hunter, Libba and Daniel got us within 3 points with roughly 2 minutes to go. This would set up our possible win, but it didn't happen, did it? Then ironically, with a minute to go, Josh Bruce gives away a free kick, winning the game for the very team he left at the end of last season. Irony is a cruel mistress, isn't it? We really put ourselves in the position to win that last quarter. However, had Zay and Cordy not got injured, which was unfortunate, I think we could have not let a few goals go through for an easy counter-attack and eventually come out with the win. The Saints had the advantage in the ruck with Ryder and Marshall up against English and Bruce/Dunkley and exploited it well enough to get the win, in my opinion. They also had a very good defense that intercepted and spoiled a lot of our inside 50 dominance. Credit to them. They had a game plan and they backed that and got the win in the end. The margin was only 3 points at the end, so the result could have gone either way. I was disappointed in not being able to get the win in this cutthroat final, where I think we could have conceivably won. But as with anyone whose team doesn't get a win during finals time, results may beg to differ. As with any team that doesn't get a win during finals time. To look on the positives, I did like that we didn't roll over and fall into our shell when our backs were against the wall at 3/4 time, as we did with last season's final, which is growth in my opinion. I'm looking forward to what we whip up next season. To sign off on the game review, it was ultimately a reflection of our season. We let the teams above us on the ladder get the ascendancy on us more than we would like. Ultimately, it would cost us the game, as there were periods in games against Port, Richmond and Brisbane where we were playing it on our terms but not scoring as much as we would like. So moving forward with an extra preseason under the belts of our players, hopefully we can dominate the midfield in the way that we would like more often and be more efficient going forward. That's where I think we need to shore up. And that's where we are at the moment. Not quite a contender, as I would like to think we would like to be. Yes, we can match it with the best, but we're a bit too inconsistent and young to be able to compete with those contending teams. Our best footy is good enough, and I hope we can reach that pinnacle sooner rather than later. So what needs to happen from here on in? What are the changes in the off-season that would make our team fast-track into our desired success? Bever said that we were going to be active in this year's trade period in his last post-game presser. So let's have a look at potential trades that could happen, and some of them, maybe, even a bit more fantastical, as to have a bit more fun with this. The 3 areas of game I think need bolstering is getting a key defender, a seasoned ruckman, and if we can, a general forward. In my opinion, getting a ruckman and defender comes as a priority before we get to chasing a forward. First, I feel like we need a key defender because our stocks in that department aren't as bolstered as I would like them. At the moment, our first choice trio seem to be Keith, Cordy and Gardner. I'll talk about Gardner in a bit in a later segment, but he has proved myself and a lot of other doubters wrong in showing that he does belong in the AFL. For depth in this department, we also have Lewis Young and Jackson Trengrove. I put an asterisk on Trengrove as he has not been offered a new contract for next season at the time of recording. I feel like we need to trade in one player to help out in this department, either as part of the first choice brigade or as a backup. Now there are 2 players that I feel could fill this spot. Tom McDonald from Melbourne and Carl Hardigan from Adelaide came to mind when I was doing my research. McDonald, who has found himself on the outer at the selection table this year at Melbourne. He has had some speculation around him, perhaps requesting a trade. Although he has played predominantly as a forward in recent seasons, he has played some of his best football as a key defender. So if we're able to work out a trade maybe all we have to do is give up a combination of a second and third to fourth round selections. I think Melbourne would try to play hardball and ask for a player or a first round draft pick in return, but given he is 28, not quite prime time, more towards the eclipse, I feel like that would not happen, nor the Dogs would entertain the idea. That being said, he might not request a trade, but if he does, he will be a great fit for us, hypothetically. Having Keith, McDonald and one of Courtney or Gunner as our first choice trio will help our defense greatly, and perhaps put us into that contending team status. Hey up! So as I was editing, the news came out that Kyle Hardigan has selected Hawthorn as his colour choice. So I was wrong, but my point still stands that we need someone like him. So kind of makes this little next section a bit redundant, but I'm going to keep it in there because, well, just because. Hardigan, on the other hand, has not quite had the high-profile career as McDonald. However, as I understand it, he is quite understated and a hard worker who just gets the job done against opposition key forwards. Not a flashy type of player by any means, but someone who just gets the job done. He's a free agent, so a trade would not be required, nor do I think he would demand as much money as McDonald. So there is a positive there in terms of the money department. If he does decide on us, or if we can lure him to the Dogs, he would be a great fit. Admittedly, not as a shoe-in for first choice as McDonald, but first choice nonetheless, in my opinion. At the very least, providing healthy competition for first team selection. Next trade will be in our ruck department. It was very apparent at times this year that we need a seasoned veteran ruckman as a part-timer to give Team English a fair rest. There have been times this year where Team English has been taken advantage of because of his inexperience and lack of strength relative to other ruckmen. Tim will be a very good player for us in the future, but as of now, he is vulnerable to being outclassed against more seasoned ruckmen who are able to use their superior strength better to their advantage. Having a veteran ruckman to not only give us some good part-time ruck capabilities, but to also guide Tim and fast-track his development will help us get on our way to be that contending team we want to be, whilst also mitigating other teams' ruck dominance over us. We were dead last in terms of hitouts this year, and we do have a game plan to accommodate this, which does work. But when it comes to the very best teams, perhaps this disadvantage, we would probably like to close that gap a bit and not have teams have such an easy time exploiting this part of our game. The two players that come to mind are Todd Goldstein and Ben Big Boy McAvoy, who are currently both at clubs going through rebuilds and at 32 and 31 respectively. Perhaps both of them may look elsewhere to find some success later on in their careers. Goldstein in particular, as Big Boy has been part of premierships in the past. Not much will have to be given up in my opinion to trade in these players. Any kind of late pick would probably be enough to get either of them. As I've said before, they will do wonders for Team English to be able to learn from one of these veterans, whilst also giving us a good second ruckman as Tim develops over the next year or two. They could also bring back the third man up rule, and we would not have to do this trade at all. Lastly on the trade table, we'll be getting consistent general forward. I'm hesitant to really entertain this idea, as we do have a decent brigade of emerging forward talents to play along with Norton, Bruce, Wallace and McLean when he comes back from injury. Dale, Vandermeer and Richards as my first choice to complete that forward line, with Shecky, Kavara and Waitsman waiting in the wings. When fit and informed, this forward line can be quite potent, but for one reason or another we haven't been as efficient as we would like going forward this year as with previous years, and it would need to be addressed either with execution or bring in someone who can help with that. A couple of names we've been linked to is Mitch Hannon recently and Jack Loney from Melbourne and St Kilda respectively. Both of these players have not been offered new contracts for next season as of yet, to the best of my knowledge. Having either of these, in my opinion, could possibly help with our efficiency going forward. We're not the most accurate side, nor are we that efficient when it comes to converting inside 50s to shots on goal. Having one of these two to just break up that congestion, especially if we have midfielders resting there, which will help massively with our efficiency. However, as I said, we do have a decent crop of forwards who didn't play in the elimination final, who were either injured, coming back from injury, or not in the best form. If it was a regular season, maybe able to find that form in the seconds and break into the side. But this year, uniquely, it was hard to gauge whether or not to take that gamble and play Vandermeer or Deo in the final, given they both recently came back from injury. Another left field option would be Tomato Peter. This long boy from Gold Coast may also fix our ruck issue as well, being able to play as second ruck when English needs a break. As I understand it, he has found himself outside of selection table at Gold Coast, with Stuart Drew preferring to play Ben King over him. However, if he does make his way to the Dogs, it does mean we do have quite a tall forward line with Norton and Bruce in that mix. But perhaps we were going to play with a 3-pronged tall lineup anyway if we were going to bring in a ruckman. Now, not that this is going to happen, but I'm going to pitch the idea of Sean Higgins to come back home to the kennel. He has once said that he wanted to be a World Cup player back in the day. But with the turmoil of the well-documented 2014 off-season, I did not blame him for wanting away with the club at the time. North Melbourne have definitely got the best out of him as a footballer, but now he is in no man's land like Goldstein, where they are older players in a rebuilding side who won't be part of that next core team. All sources at the moment point him to signing with Geelong for next year, but wouldn't it be romantic to see him come back and be a real contributor for our side? Realistically, I think we could land one of Loney or Hannon. Then when it comes to key defenders, there doesn't seem to be much chatter on that front. And with the ruck situation, some personalities have suggested some suitors for us, but no official confirmation coming from any directly involved parties as of yet. We'll wait and see for the trade period. Theoretically, we could be looking at this for what we would gain and lose looking at what's available. There are a lot of unknowns coming out of this, and there are players who may move that I haven't even thought of. This is just my best educated guess based on the information I have available. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of the season where we do have to make some cuts to our list. It's a shitty thing about being in the top competition, but it's a ruthless business and some calls have to be made by those entrusted in doing so. Not me, that's for sure. I'm sure they do not like making list calls, as I'm sure this group has gotten very tight given the hub situation this year, bringing the team probably as close as they have been in recent seasons, with the speculation that list sizes will be cut down from 44 to anywhere between 36 and 40, we may have to make some tough calls. So here's some players who may be cut. I don't like that they may be culled, but I'm trying to be as objective as possible. Not going to say any of these guys are going to be definitely delisted, but I believe these will be some of the names that will pop up in that conversation. First is Matt Suckling. He has a well-documented, unusual kicking style, and Suckling is well liked in the locker room and is often in the mix for the best 22. However, with his age at 32 comes the decline of consistency to find his best form. He has not yet been offered a new contract for next season at the time of recording. Has an excellent kick, but will that all he will be offered in the future? Can he be kept on to teach some of the younger kids about the demands and rigors of AFL football? This is for the list managers to evaluate and make a decision on. Next up is Billy Gowers. Now he has had an up and down time at the Dogs, coming from the VFL after getting delisted by Carlton. He has spent the last 3 seasons at the Dogs. He has often been the whipping boy for Western Bulldogs supporters, although he does try his hideout on the park every time he's out there. However, is his time up at the Dogs? He was named an emergency in that elimination final, if I can remember correctly, but probably behind Vandermeer and Dale at the selection table, in my personal opinion. Though he is quite liked in the locker room, so perhaps a list spot is warranted just for some good energy and team morale, regardless if he plays or not. Next up, Jackson Trengove came to us 3 years ago on a 3-year deal from Port Adelaide. So his contract is up and is now a free agent. I'm not sure how free agency works. With, at the time of recording, the Dogs have not renewed his contract as of yet. He provides good depth in our ruck and in defence, though he only managed to play 1 game this season. He will be 30 next year, but will it be worth keeping him around for 1 or 2 years as cover for English or our key defenders, whilst providing some leadership, being one of the veterans at the club to the younger pups? This is ultimately up to the club to make that decision. Callum Porter was drafted in 2017 and in his 3 seasons has managed to play 1 game, debuting this season. He's a hard worker from my perception of him, and like ours, is well liked in the locker room. Bevo often pulls him up in front of the group to tell a joke.
Hey guys. So I met Chris Judd at the supermarket.
Is it worth keeping around for that locker room spirit? Is it possible to have 2 on the list that may not be quite first team material but are good just for team morale? I don't know, and he is only 21, so he does have some room to grow, at least in the football department, but has only managed 1 game in 3 years. However, I'll leave that decision up to the list managers. Only they know best for the list we have and what it needs in the future. Brad Lynch showed some very good signs in his debut season 2018. With an injury-interrupted 2019, he did not get on the park since. However, with a relatively free injury run in 2020, he was still not able to make selection. Perhaps this was due to not being a consistent second competition for him to show his worth. It must be said that I did like how he played a couple of seasons ago, but managing not to play in the last 2 seasons does raise the question if the club will be willing to give him a spot on the list next season. Keeping in mind that there may be a list reduction AFL-wide, he may be unlucky not to be able to retain his spot. Jordan Sweet, brought on a couple of seasons ago as a project player to fill that good tap ruckman role. Probably the same as Lynch and a few others due to the absence of the second competition, he couldn't show his stuff to earn a call-up. He's still young at 22 and it does take some time for the big men to really develop, so maybe he still stays on. Not having debut as of yet is something to take into account. However, he isn't the only big ruckman to not debut early on in his career. Last but not least is Lin Jong. Fan favourite Lin Jong has been on our list for quite a while and has suffered injury after injury, unfortunately. Has proved to be an excellent player when he plays, with good overhead marking, pace and a decent kick on him. Though with the culling of list sizes, the list managers must evaluate if Lin is worthy of a spot on the Dogs list, given his injury history. Like Porter and Gowers, he is well liked in the locker room as well. In my opinion, as a fan favourite, it will be unfortunate if he gets delisted, as I feel he is more of a positive impact on the field when he can get his body right. I do have a personal soft spot for him.
The unfortunate thing is that we may have to say goodbye to some of these names in the off-season.
If it hasn't happened already by the time of uploading. It is a difficult decision to make, and there are only so many spots on an AFL list due to its competitive nature, with everyone fighting for a spot in the best 22. If any of these blokes get delisted, well, I thank them for the service to the footy club and the joy they bring to many Bulldog supporters, I'm sure.
As it stands, most pundits see highly touted number 1 draft pick Jamara Ugle-Hagan be picked up by the Dogs at pick 1. Under the new Generation Academy rules, Adelaide would bid and we would have to match with the picks that we have. As of now, we do not have enough picks to match that bid in points, so as of right now, we would go into deficit of points heading into next year's draft, causing 1 or 2 of our picks to slide down as a result. We need 2,400 points to match the bid without getting into deficit. I expect during the trade period for us to split our current first round pick, pick 13, into 2 later picks, giving us more points. It wouldn't surprise me either if we bring in a few picks ourselves through some player movement or trading out futures for current picks. We may also be looking at Cody Reck, who is touted to go anywhere in the 2nd or 3rd round, but obviously not on as many points as the first pick in the draft. So at the very least, we could pick up Jamara and Rack in the draft and go into next season with a point deficit for that draft.
To end the season review, let's have some player reviews, some who surprised me and others who I thought took their game to new levels. First up is Ryan Gardner. I, like most people, were frustrated at Ryan Gardner at times this season, especially early on when we weren't doing so well. He was often the scapegoat or a whipping boy for the supporters. Some even took to the socials to voice their dissatisfaction towards his selection in the first team. And yes, I was quite frustrated at Gardner at times this season. However, most of his mistakes in hindsight looked like he was just adjusting to the pace of the AFL. He was put in the deep end this season, with at times it was him and Keith going up against seasoned key forwards later on in the season when Zane Cordy was out injured, especially in that final where it was just him and Keith against the world with that tall St Kilda forward setup. But he did stand up quite well at times this year, and he is quite an athletic player, being able to spoil and keep up with some of the best key forwards. As the next season rolls on, hopefully he gets more accustomed to the game and starts to execute things a lot better than he is. He does seem he's still getting up to speed to the tempo of AFL, which is where most of his mistakes derive from, I believe, though he is getting better as the weeks go on. As he gets used to it, I think he can back his own ability a bit more because he does have a good kick on him when he can pull it off. Some mistakes often happen when you're trying to do too much, but once he gets another preseason to clear his head and get used to playing at AFL level, he'll be better for it. Is he the most talented bloke on the AFL list? No, but neither was Dale Morris, especially early on. But I do hope as time goes by that he at least turns into a very solid defender for us to rely on. Next up is Latham Vandermeer. Second-year player, didn't play in his first season, battling injuries. I feel he was very solid this year and deserved to be awarded the best first-year player in our season rewards. He's quick, takes the game on and has a good penetrating kick on him. Really surprised me as I haven't really much heard from him beforehand. He did get injured in the latter part of the season and was available for the final, but didn't play. We would probably be pushing him too hard to get back out there, in my opinion, if he were to play that week. Looking forward to what he can bring in the following seasons. Maybe he can be part of the forward half puzzle we are trying to solve. Next up, Bailey Williams. Really grew into his own this year, worked really hard in the off-season, and it has paid off massively. I always liked the way he played in the past, always took the game on and was clean in his disposal. Now he has locked down a spot in the backline as a general defender, playing every game this season. He always had the potential in my eyes and has won the most improved player on our awards night, with lots of pundits thinking he's the most improved in the competition as well. I'm looking forward to him forming a great half-back brigade with Daniel, Crozier and Wood. Perhaps he can grow more into an interceptor like Wood in the future. Either way, I'm glad he took responsibility for his own career this season and really took his game to another level. Caleb Daniel really went to another level this season, earning himself a nod for the All-Australian team. In the future, he could be Beva's Mr. Fix-It if he isn't already. In that elimination final, he was tagged, and so Beva put him in the midfield and forward line and switched him around here and there, which almost resulted in a win for us. So in the future, maybe that is something to keep up our sleeve. He will be a big part of our future for sure. Josh Shaki. I'm only bringing up Shaki due to the arrival of Jamara Ugle-Hagen. Will he find himself on the out and out? Our forward line could be very tall next season, with first choices potentially being Norton, Bruce, Jamara and the resting ruckman, whoever they may be. Or maybe Jamara may not play as many games next season, leaving some room for Shaki to play. Either way, I hope he doesn't get discontented next season. He is only 23, still young. As with young big forwards, they could take some time to grow. Not all of them are great straight out the gate. Could Norton be shifted to the backline to make way for Shaki? Could be a potential move, but I doubt it, as Norton is pretty much marketed as a marquee key forward. Theoretically, he may be able to find his feet in the next year or so and show people the player he promised to be from his former number 2 draft pick status. But in any case, he is very accurate in front of goal, so at the very least will be great cover for any of our tools should one of them get injured. So to wrap up, should we shore up some positional stocks in the trade period, get Jamara and Rack in the draft, and see some more continued development of our players in the off/preseason? We should be able to bring our best footy more consistently, and hopefully make us a contender for years to come along with a very good young crop of players coming through.